So with that, we do have a wonderful young professionals panel with us here today from Argo Group. And Jennifer, I will turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tandeka, for the warm welcome. And wow, there are so many people here joining. Thank you for being here with us today. We are excited to be speaking with you all. And I can't be excited enough because we have a fantastic panel here. And so with that, I'd love to get us started. First to talk about, Argo Group. We are a U.S. specialty insurance company in the property and casualty market. We have a very fantastic relationship and partnership with the Spencer Foundation for a number of years now, including the creation of the Argo Group Diversity Scholarship, which is going to help undergraduate students who are studying risk management at the University of Illinois. And so today you are going to hear from my colleagues here at Argo who are rising stars, really leaders on their teams and experts in their area, and learn about insights from their career paths. And with that, let's meet them. So ladies, if you can please go through your name, title, the state you're in, as well as your college alma mater and degree. And Terza, you're going to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here with you today. I am Terza Bartley. I'm an assistant vice president in the primary casualty group at Argo. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I graduated from Temple University with a degree in risk management, insurance, and actuarial science. So all you owls out there, go owls.
And I'm Jackie Schuler. I am in the Digital and Technology Services Department, so IT here at Argo. I am based in Powhatan County, a little bit outside of Richmond, Virginia. And my alma mater was Virginia Commonwealth University, and I had a degree in environmental studies with a minor in statistics. So that's where my background comes from.
And I'm Danielle Sheridan. I am an assistant vice president for property and casualty as well. I run the owner's interest team for our construction division. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I went to Longwood University. I am the outlier here. I have a degree in theater with a minor in children's studies.
Fantastic. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Mendez. I'm the Director of Digital Marketing Communications here at Argo Group. I am based in San Antonio, Texas. And yes, it is as hot as you are hearing on the news. And I went to Trinity University here in San Antonio, and I have a BS in Business Administration with a concentration in marketing and also communications. And with that, I think what's really exciting here about our panel today is the variety of roles represented that are available in the industry, right? More along the traditional path where you see, or traditional roles around underwriting, right, with Terza and Danielle, but also business analysts, as Jackie's representing on that data and analytics side, and I, of course, in communications and marketing. And so I'd love to dive in more here, right? We have some very unique career paths that we're about to hear about. And I want you to be able to see, where each of these panelists, started. And with that, Terza, let's start with you. What initially drew you into insurance? Would you consider it a linear path?
So I actually went to college with the idea of being a legal studies major. I wanted to go to law school. At Temple University, every student in the business school has to take intro to risk management along with intro to human resources, accounting, finance. But if you do well in intro to risk management, you kind of get taken aside by the chair of the department, and they just tell you how great insurance is as a career. You're guaranteed a job before you graduate. Insurance is old, male, and stale, so you will have tons of room for advancement. So I was like, I'll try it out. Definitely drank the Kool-Aid. So glad that I stuck it out with risk management.
I love that, Terza. I love that you drank the Kool-Aid and loved the flavor. You can definitely hear the passion you have just by the way you speak about it. That's amazing. And now, Danielle, if I recall, you put up a little bit of a fight before you finally gave in to the insurance industry. Let's hear a little bit more about that.
I certainly did. My dad is in property claims, and I grew up thinking there was no way I was ever going to work in insurance. I had a theater degree, as I mentioned, in college. And my dad said, hey, I am following you and very excited about your career, but I'd love you to have a backup. Come to New York, where he lived at the time, intern at an insurance company, and we'll go see a Broadway show every couple of weeks. And I said, done, I'm in. 20 years old, moved to New York, did that for the summer, and I ended up really loving it. I interned at Seneca Insurance Company in their property division and really, really loved it so much that when I graduated from college, I moved back to New York and started working there full time. That was about 9 years ago. I've never looked back, and I absolutely love this industry now.
Fantastic. And we're so excited to have you. And now, Jackie, I know you had definitely a bit of a non-traditional start to, your career path in insurance. Can you give us some insight?
Oh, absolutely. And it was very non-traditional and a little bit of a surprise. I actually started as an engineering major. So that was a big divert path. I realized that I did not want to know how things worked. I wanted to know. After change to environmental studies and minor statistics, I fell in love with statistics and the analysis and data. When I kind of took that as a good direction to pursue. It was a surprise to end up in the insurance network. I was a prime candidate of, I knew someone who knew someone to help me get my first job, which happened to be in an insurance firm, and I loved it. And I went forward with that.
Love it. It's so funny to hear from all three of you, which I think is a pretty, common trend you hear in the insurance industry. It wasn't always purposeful for a lot of people. I ended up in insurance this way. And I think it's really interesting to hear from all three of you how, very different ways you ended up in insurance, but the same trend of you all love it and are so glad, you came into this path. Now, I know we heard, Danielle, you mentioned this. I know all three of you have, great experience with internships, right? So getting your foot in the door, starting, to think about your career and building that. Internships are a great place to start, right? To get that work experience, meet other people. So I'd love to hear, Danielle, let's start with you. How did you choose your internship? Or I know you gave a little bit of insight there. Let's go a bit more into it. And then any advice of how, our group here can make the most out of it?
Sure. I applied to a couple of different carriers in New York, and I chose the first one that gave me an offer to intern. It was simple as that, really. I went into it with absolutely no expectations. I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't there to learn insurance. I was there to watch Broadway shows, right? So I went into it just saying, you know what, I'm going to give it a real shot. I'm going to give it a chance. And I learned an incredible amount. I still have really strong connections from the time that I interned there. And I really recommend, if you're going into an internship, even if it's not exactly what you would want or what you think you want, be open to it, be open to what you can learn, and try to make as many connections as possible. This industry, it's so important to make those connections. It is a relationship business, and you can start those relationships as early as you are now in your careers.
Absolutely. And really great advice there, Danielle, because, your first internship, to Danielle's point, may not be exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that's okay. As you're hearing from this group, there was a lot of changes early on in figuring out what they wanted to do long-term. So really look at that internship as an opportunity to build your skill set, make connections, and really figure out, what do you like, maybe what you don't like. Now, Jackie, I know you're going to have a really interesting, unique internship here to explain to the group. Let's go through that.
It's funny again that you mentioned the internships may not be exactly what you are doing now. So this is a prime example of that. I was very fortunate being in Richmond, Virginia. We were very close to NASA Langley Research Center. So I was very fortunate in high school to do a program with NASA that then led into an internship in my undergrad, where we had to basically put a team together to put humans on Mars. We had to do it from soup to nuts. We had to basically, here's your budget, here's your task, go figure it out. And that really helped to dive into that analysis, that teamwork. And then we also had to present our findings to a series of engineers, scientists, even the director of the center herself, which really helped groom those customer-facing skills, presentation skills, and to help us with any of those nerves of just being so young and having to do big presentations like that. So definitely not a insurance internship, but building a lot of skills that did help me into the insurance world.
Fantastic. So excited. I mean, call mission control, that is quite the experience, right? Now, Teresa, I'm excited to hear from you because I think it's going to be a bit relevant for this group, given that you have a risk management major in your background. Let's hear.
Yeah, so Temple has a great internship reception where a lot of companies come and you're basically speed dating, going up to a bunch of different tables, kind of selling yourself to different companies. That's how I got my internship. I actually interned on the wholesale broker side. A couple weeks into my internship, figured out that wasn't for me. I'd rather be on the carrier side. But it was important to still make those connections, still learn as much as I possibly could on the wholesale side, knowing that I wanted to be on the carrier side. And that definitely helped me out in my career, having that small experience on the wholesale side, kind of understanding what they go through with trying to get information from their retailer. So have a common knowledge base. But yeah, and definitely make as many connections as you can, because I actually work with the people that I intern with now.
Fantastic. And again, hearing that trend of, making the most of the opportunity and taking that experience in, because you never know how it will help and benefit you down the road, even if it's not directly, like Terza was saying, learning about the broker side. And now, she's been doing underwriting for a number of years and how that's benefited her. And so, we're speaking about internships, where we started, right? Early, I would say early career or even before career. And, we're talking to a number of undergrads here. I'd love to hear from each of you, if you could go back to your undergrad self, what is the advice you would give them? And, is it around classes or certifications and credits, or even, just general advice? Terza, let's start with you.
If I could go back and talk to my college self, I probably would say take advantage of the CPCU class credits that you're going to get. And while you're in that studying mindset, get as many designations as you possibly can. It is way different to study when you're years removed from college. Also, definitely try to talk to everyone in your major. Insurance is so small, and I run into so many people that are like, hey, I went to Temple with you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you do not remember this person. So try to make a connection with everyone that you possibly can.
That's fantastic. Really practical advice. And one tip I'd love to add on to Terza's point, if you meet someone in person, don't forget to make that connection on LinkedIn, right? You can turn in-person connections into virtual. It's a great way to keep in touch, see what they're doing. And if you ever, need to reach out at a later time, it's an easy, contact avenue. Great advice, Terza. Thank you. And now, Danielle, what would you tell your former undergrad self?
Not to worry so much about the future, about where it was going. Honestly, this industry is such a melting pot that you're going to run into people who have backgrounds all over the place. I wish that I'd allowed myself, once I realized I was going to go into insurance, to have more fun finishing out my theater degree, because I use my theater skills all the time in this industry. I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of communicating with brokers, things like that. So it's really important to have that skill set. I'd say take a class that maybe doesn't go directly towards your major, just because you might make a connection, make a friend, or learn something that you can then pull out in a meeting down the line to make that interesting connection with somebody else down the line. Just have some fun and don't worry too much about the future. Obviously have a plan, be excited about where you're going, but note that anything that you're learning now, any skill that you have, any fun thing that you're doing, all of it comes together and ends up being important for you down the line and making connections.
I love that. I definitely love the emphasis. Have fun, and especially all of you undergrads, definitely take the advantage now. Don't worry, it's still fun later on, but you're in a really unique time of your life where you get to focus on learning and building out, what you want to do in the long term. Jackie, let's hear from you.
So similar to what Danielle was saying, definitely have fun, but recent advice that I actually got from a mentor myself was don't let your career be accidental, meaning have some kind of plan. Doesn't have to be everything laid out, but don't 5 years from now realize, oh wait, how did I get here, and let things just kind of unfold accidentally. Have some thought and some interest in what you do. If it's something and you notice that you like, take it and pursue it. But be prepared to excel with opportunities come your way. Don't shun away from opportunities, but definitely be a little bit more selective in what your career looks like.
That's great, Jackie. Really great advice. Experiment purposely, right? Think about, like Jackie said, what's that next step, next 3 or 5 steps look like in your career. So we talked a little bit about internships, right? That kind of first dip into, what the working life looks like, what your career could be looking like. Let's move a step forward into our first job. And, as someone who's been at Argo for 8 years now, I started right out of college. It's a little crazy to think back all the way to the time I first interviewed, thinking about that process. I do remember the butterflies, also excitement. I'm actually leaving college and getting into the real world. And so I'm sure my panelists here can think back to that day, and I'd love to hear from each of you on what tips and tricks, do you have, or advice you have for approaching that interview process. Tirza, let's start with you.
Yeah, my tip would be to definitely look up the company that you're interviewing with. I know it sounds so basic, but yeah, do your research on the company. Do your research on the people that's interviewing you. I always like to stalk their LinkedIn page, see if I can find a common connection so that when I start the interview, I can break the ice. I can say, hey, I see that you grew up in Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore. Just find a way to calm yourself down, make it seem like a more personal, get to know you session as opposed to a scary interview.
Fantastic. Great advice. Really research step one. I think that's perfect place to start. Danielle, let's hear from you.
A little further to that too, you can also research basic interview questions. Just look them up on Google and do a mock interview with your family or your friends. It's simple things that you don't know how you're going to answer in an interview process. Like, what's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? In the moment when you're in a boardroom with people wearing suits, that can be a really scary question if you haven't practiced it ahead of time. So do that, take advantage of your friends' time, your family's time, and practice with them. And then also make sure you come prepared with questions to ask your interviewers. At the end of every interviewer, they're going to say, do you have any questions for us? And it always impresses me when people come prepared with questions about the company or about the role that they're applying for, anything like that. Really important that you engage in those interview sessions with your own questions.
I love that. Such great advice, Danielle. And like you said, even if you can't think of a question right away, you can research some questions to at least have prepared to ask, even if it's not something top of mind. It shows you're engaged, curious. Jackie, what are your insights here?
So I really don't have much to add other that Tirza and Danielle didn't already mention, but one thing I've always kind of focused on is make sure you have a nice outfit. Look nice to show off yourself, present yourself well, make you feel confident. And particularly in today's world where we do have a lot of virtual interviews, it is noticeable if you show up in a dirty sweatshirt. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind, that those first impressions, they do last, particularly about your grooming.
Great way to round out the advice. It never hurts to just, when you dress feeling your best, you're going to perform your best too. So great tip there, Jackie. And quick reminder, as Tandeka mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, or we will have time at the end as well for a Q&A session. Our colleague Brianna has put in a Slido link into the chat, so you can just use that to submit questions as well. Now, we talked a bit about how to prepare for the interview process and advice there, but let's talk about the other side, right? Because in addition to you wanting to be prepared for an interview, putting your best foot forward, you also are assessing the company as well. It is definitely a two-way street. We spend a lot of time at work, so you want to make sure you're joining a company and going into a role that you feel, confident about, that's going to be a good fit for you, both in short-term and long-term career development. So I'd love to hear about some of the green flags and even red flags you look for in a company and a manager during this process. And Danielle, I'd love for you to kick us off.
Sure. Some of the things that I look for are companies that have been around for a while. I would prefer for stability to be there rather than working for a startup. Not that there's anything wrong with startup companies. They can do really well. But for me, starting out in my career especially, I wanted a company that I knew I was going to have stability with and be able to stay with for a while and really grow my career. I also check to see who I'm interviewing with. Am I only interviewing with the manager, or do they place the agency on their team members to actually be part of that interview process? Remember, as much as you're being interviewed, you're also interviewing them. So what are your first impressions of them? What's your gut instinct? If you leave an interview saying, I really just don't like the way they were talking to me, or they didn't seem to respect me, trust your gut on that. They're probably not the best company for you to go to. There are so many amazing companies, Argo being one of the best in my opinion. But really during that interview process, keep in mind that it's a mutual way that you're going through it. You're not the only one being interviewed. And if you don't like them, don't continue the process.
100%. Well said, Danielle. Jackie, what are your thoughts here?
So similar to what Danielle was saying, definitely do your research on the company. What's their AM Best rating? What technologies do they use? What's the manager's communication style? Are you vibing with them? Definitely something I look for when I'm interviewing is if I'm able to be at ease and talk about myself comfortably. Some of the red flags I've experienced, unfortunately, is with me being so young in my career as an early professional. I was viewed as green going into an interview. And in hindsight, I probably should have walked away from the position that viewed me that way, because I had to prove myself and work very, very hard to prove that I wasn't green. I actually knew what I was doing. So definitely echoing what Danielle said, if you have that gut reaction after interviewing, definitely listen to it. There's definitely some validity to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Jackie. You know, going first step into the door, you don't want to already feel like you're being put into a box, especially based on assumptions too. No one wants, that doesn't make you feel valued or respected really, you know, in a job that you're supposed to be excited about, and you want to feel like you're, you know, contributing your all. Terza, I'd love to hear from you.
I think the biggest red flag for me would be a company that may, preach about something and they're not actually showing it. So a good example of this would be DEI. If a company is saying we value DEI, but you look at the leadership of the organization and you're not seeing that, I would say that's a red flag. That was something that I really valued about Argo when I was doing my research. Our head of Bermuda is a person of color. The people that were interviewing me and the division that I was going into were both minority women. So I saw a path forward for me at this company.
Really well said. And such an important note, Terza. You want to see a company that can walk the walk, because putting a statement on a website or, like you said, preaching it is definitely not going to show action. And you want to feel represented and feel like you're going to go into a supportive environment. So thank you for sharing that insight. Now, we talked about the interview process. You all assessed the company during that, and you took the job, right? So your first job, what was your title? And give a little insight into the roles you had after that, leading up to where you are now at Argo. And Danielle, I'm going to have you start us off.
Sure. My first title was associate underwriter, associate account executive / underwriter, technically. It was at Seneca Insurance Company, the same company that I interned for. I went in and luckily had a mentor from when I interned. I ended up working with the same manager, and she really helped push me through it. I was pretty clear when I got in there that I really wanted to end up in underwriting. I wanted to move quickly. I wanted to master the processes really, really quickly and move on to the next thing. The biggest thing that I can say that got me to where I am is that I constantly asked for more. I went in, I tackled whatever I was learning, and then I asked for the next thing. I never said, okay, I've got it. I'm just going to keep rolling with what I'm doing. And I think that's really important for me as an early professional, and even now, to keep pushing through your career and learning as much as possible.
That's great, Danielle. And exactly, like your career path is a great example of, how you continue to pursue challenges, learn new things, and look at how, far you've excelled, leader of a unit. That's amazing. Jackie, what was your first title? And tell us a little bit more about that pathway.
So I actually started as a consultant. So I was a little bit more selective, being a free agent of sorts, with what companies I was going to be able to go into. Fortunately, it was an insurance firm that I had my first luck with. But I was a junior business analyst at the time, and basically an assistant to a project coordinator. So I would assist a PM with a lot of the grunt work, reports, a lot of Excel work, which really kind of got my feet wet into what the business was. I do have to say, looking back, my manager really did help groom me into more of that thinking outside the box business analyst role. So my advice was really to be open to feedback, whether it's positive or even criticism, because it doesn't come from a negative place. They're really trying to help you be better in the position that you are in and to go further with that position.
That's great, Jackie. I'm so excited, so glad to hear you had such a supportive manager, especially so early on. That's really critical, to developing your skill set, both soft and hard skills, right? And so even if you're early on, right, still an undergrad, don't be afraid to look for a mentor right now, right? Or if you join an internship, work with your manager closely, have that open line of communication. as you heard from Jackie, it can have really great benefits in the long term and how you develop yourself professionally and even personally. Terza, now I know you're about to tell us almost like a one-of-a-kind job star. I am so excited for you to go through this.
Yeah, so I just want to preface this that my first job is not the norm. So I actually was in a leadership program. It was a 2-year rotation. My title was lead associate. And the point of this program was to basically groom the next leadership for the company. So I did a 2-year rotation where I worked very closely with my divisional president, learning the ins and out of my business unit. But I also had mentors in other business units that I worked closely with, working on projects, just really being well-rounded about different business units in the company. I also worked on projects with the CEO, the CAO, the CFO, a lot of access to high-level executives just to understand, the ins and out of business, get you excited for what you could do in the future.
Amazing. I mean, to have that experience from the start with C-level suite is just incredible.
It was a lot of work.
Well, and you've kept your passion and excitement, so clearly you didn't let it ever get you down. Awesome. So we heard from our awesome panelists here, where they started, what their first internships look like, what their first jobs look like. Now let's talk about where they are today at Argo Group in their current roles. And so I'd love to hear from each of you, and Jackie, we'll start with you. How long have you been at Argo Group? What's your tenure look like? And what's something that you love about working here? What's keeping you?
So my tenure here at Argo is 5 years. I'm apparently an old timer now, apparently. So I've been here for 5 years, but what keeps me here at Argo is definitely the people and the culture. I really do love the people I work with, and being a woman in insurance, and let alone in IT, you don't really see that very often. And here at Argo, we have not only great women, but we have a lot of women in IT, which is great. We have a breadth of knowledge from all different backgrounds and diversities, which is also great to be able to work with. And we also have a great family feel. I am a very, I'm a new mom, so I am able to broadcast my daughter and share pictures, and people are very curious about my personal life and very genuine to ask, hey, how's Abigail doing? Which creates a very good family feel. But when it's time for business and time for work, we buckle down and we get work done. So we do have a good mix of work and play that makes working enjoyable here at Argo.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you're having that support with your team, especially for that work-life balance. And Danielle, I know you're a little bit newer to Argo, but have already made great strides, in your role. Can you give us some more background?
Sure. I've been here for about a year. I came in as a senior underwriter, and my team didn't have a manager. We were kind of in a transitionary period. After I came in and learned the product, I was fortunate enough to apply for the team lead role and started doing that in November of last year. It's been really incredible. The support that I had going from my beginning role into the role that I have now has been really wonderful. And I think my favorite thing about Argo, kind of like what Jackie was talking about, is how amazing the people are and how encouraging everyone is. I'm also a new mom, so the flexibility of working full-time remote is really nice. And then we also have a lot of employee resource groups that are really incredible. So if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, if you're a veteran, if you're early in your career, we have a bunch of really amazing different organizations that you can join and meet people from outside of your business unit through that. We also have a community relations committee in most of our major cities. The Richmond one, I'm fortunate enough to be on the board of, and we do amazing community outreach and we donate to local organizations. I'm also on the board of an organization called Stop Child Abuse Now. And last year, Argo donated $10,000 to them. So they really care about what's happening in the community. They care about their employees as individuals, and they also care about the places that their employees live. It's a really fantastic program that we have here. And I've never seen anything like it in my time in the industry.
I love that, Danielle. Thank you so much for the great overview. And it's awesome to see how involved you are in these different areas outside of your day job. Terza, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo Danielle and Jackie, The people. I love my primary casualty team. Everyone is so great. We are competitive, but at the same time, we're excited for each other when someone has a really great month. The management here is so accessible, so knowledgeable. I loved my managers. She was so supportive and helped me get to that next level in my career. She's now my colleague, and Chris Stram, have to shout him out. Literally the best person to work with, work for. He's so smart, so understanding. But then outside of that, Argo really cares about their employees. Like Danielle was talking about with the employee resource groups, it is really refreshing to know that senior leadership really walks the walk and talks the talk and cares about their employees, what matters to them, and how to keep them engaged with the company.
I love that. And, just for some background, for those that maybe aren't as familiar with employee resource groups, sometimes they're called employee advocacy groups. They're basically internal communities made up of employees with shared interests. And they allow people to come together, discuss ideas, initiatives, work with senior leadership, like Teresa was talking about, to make, suggestions for how we can make, the company a better place for all employees so they can feel included and supported. And for example, I know Danielle mentioned the LGBTQ plus group. I'm also very active in that. We also have, as she said, disabilities, veterans, FIRM, which stands for faith, ethnicity, race, and multiculturalism, which actually Teresa is the chair of. I don't know, Teresa, if you want to just give a little more insight into your experience there.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's something that I'm very passionate about. We have the support of our chief administrative officer, and it's so refreshing that we have this idea, we want to get employees engaged, and she's like, hey, yeah, go for it. The firm ERG has recently worked with NAIA, the National African American Insurance Association, and LAIA and AIN, which are for Latin Americans and Asian Americans, making sure that they're represented in the community and feeling great about insurance.
That's fantastic. Again, some real examples of how employee resource groups are able to put ideas into action with company leadership. And like you've heard here, Argo Group is a great example of that. And, before I move on to our next question, Jackie, I wanted to see, I know you're on the Early Career Professionals ERG with me. We're both on the committee. Wanted to see if you had anything to add.
Yeah, so very pertinent to this group, there is the Early Careers Professionals ERG, and this is actually a great opportunity in Argo where we are able to set up executive roundtables, lunch and learns with some of these execs and different people from different backgrounds. Like for me, I'm in IT, so I may not always have connections with like our reinsurance group, but we can have those lunch and learns where I can learn a little bit more about what's going on in our company. We also had an initiative called the Coffee Chats, which is, as it sounds, where we help people set up quote unquote coffee chats, 5-10 minutes or more, where they can talk with someone outside of their direct department. That program has now launched company-wide and is being managed by our HR group because it was such a favorable program that people really look to do.
Just to add to that, I am a firm believer in the coffee chats. I met 2 of my Argo BFFs from the coffee chats, people that are in completely different areas of Argo. And now we are friends on Instagram. We text each other about books, chat in the middle of the day. And being a remote employee in Baltimore, it's just perfect for me because now I have friends at Argo.
Oh, that's so much fun. It's a great way, like you said, Teresa, to stay connected, especially in this hybrid workforce. So I would love to flip the script now. We talked a lot about how each of you approached, an interview, preparing for it. But all 3 of you now are on the other side. You are growing your teams, helping hiring talent into Argo Group. So what do you look for when you're hiring talent? Danielle.
I look for people who are on time. That's the first thing. If you're late to your interview, automatically you're off on a bad foot with me. I look for people who ask intelligent questions and who give thoughtful responses to the questions that are being asked. It's really obvious when you don't know an answer and you're pandering, looking for something. So be willing to say, I don't know, but I really want to learn. If somebody asks you a direct question about skill or something like that, say, you know what, I don't know that, but I'm really excited to learn about it. Being humble in those situations is smart. You can be a little braggy, talk about your accomplishments, but if you really don't know the answer to something, don't feel like you have to make something up, because it's very apparent when you do.
Well said, Danielle. Thank you. Terza, what is your advice here?
Yeah, Danielle pretty much hit the nail on the head. Definitely, I look for someone that is eager to learn, someone that's honest and says, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to get my feet dirty and dig in and learn as much as possible. That's something that I definitely look for. To Danielle's point, don't oversell yourself. Once you start working, we're gonna figure out. But at the same time, don't undersell yourself. If you're confident and you have a unique skill set, definitely highlight that.
It's great, both of you covering that really relevant advice, especially to this group, because you are so early in your career, right? It's okay. You're not going to know everything. So trust me, like you heard from Danielle and from Terza, if they were interviewing you for, a junior role, they're not going to expect you to know everything under the sun. So be honest, because also I'm sure your manager then is going to know that's an area they can help support you in and know where you might need a little more building and growth in that skill set area. Jackie, anything to add?
The only thing I really want to add is I look for someone who's a go-getter, or who is willing to take initiative, who I can lead to water and they would drink on their own. I don't need to handhold throughout their entire job. I can give them a task and they run with it. So that's something I really look for. As well as in the IT world, we definitely want to see someone who is willing to grow with the times and keep up with their skills and learn new things. So that's something I look for.
Fantastic. Again, very applicable advice. I think you all covered it. I guess my only example would be, which I feel like I really shouldn't have to say this, but it seems like common sense. I've actually had someone do it though. Obviously don't text on your phone during an interview, put it to the side. Don't even bring it in with you. Even if you're doing a virtual one, keep it away. I've actually had someone pick up the phone and just casually start messaging someone during an interview. So just a helpful tip to not do that. So I think a big piece, it's funny, I don't know if we talk about it a lot, but when you think about your career and your role, I think a big piece to staying passionate about it and eager and excited is being interested in it, right? You're going to put a lot more effort and work into something if you find it interesting, you want to do it, you want to wake up every morning and like, I'm ready. Maybe not every morning. Mondays are rough, but you do want to feel like you're excited to do what you're doing. And so I'd love to hear, we'll start with you, Terza, what keeps you interested in insurance?
Yeah, I think the fact that it's always changing, there are always going to be new products that come out and new ways that we're going to have to find out how to insure it. So that's really exciting for me. And then just on the day-to-day, working with my brokers. As Danielle said earlier, insurance is a people business. So I really like to get to know my brokers on a personal level so that when we're working on accounts, it doesn't feel like we're working. It feels like we're, friends problem solving together. So that's something that really keeps me excited about insurance.
I love that. And it's a great reminder. I mean, I think a number of people might know this, but it is a people industry. I don't think a lot of people outside our industry realize that, but it is a very, people first industry, whether you're in underwriting, brokers, business analysts, there's so much interactions there. Danielle, what about you?
I think for me, I love how vast the industry is. It covers absolutely everything. To own a business, to run a business, you have to have insurance. So we get to figure out, like Teresa said, every single thing, how to insure it. It's always changing. There's always something new to learn. There are umpteenth number of roles that you can pursue. Even in my 9 years, I've been on the carrier side, on the wholesaler side. I've done a lot of different organizations in the industry that you can join. Like there's a never ending amount of things to keep you busy and things to learn. Just staying hungry for knowledge and learning new things has always kept me really interested in the industry.
That's great. Got to stay interested, learn more, and it's always going to help you further your knowledge as well. And I think it's so funny that, again, there's such a stereotype about the insurance industry that we're slow, we're outdated, but I can tell you from my 8 years at least, oh my gosh, sometimes I'm like, slow down, like, Argo moves at the speed of light, and always trying something different, whether it's how we work with our brokers, or is there something we can be doing that's helping them do business faster or more efficient? Or, how can we continue to foster those relationships, both in person and virtually? And so it's definitely a really exciting industry to be in, because it's never going to be stagnant. There's always something around the corner. So we're about to go into our last planned question, and then we will move into Q&A. So reminder, I saw my colleague Brianna dropped in the Slido information again, but if you have any questions, please feel free to submit, or of course, you can raise your hand as well. So kind of wrapping everything up, ladies, I'd love to hear, I always love this question, what's the best and worst advice you've received? Jackie.
So honestly, the best advice that I've received is don't be complacent. It really did help me find what I like, why I like it, why I stick with something. If I feel myself becoming a little bit more bored, I will go and look for something to keep me interested. So definitely don't be complacent. That's the best advice. Similarly, on the worst advice I received is a job is a job. If you start feeling that mentality of a job is you're dreading going in, it's just a job, I need to make money, it might be time for a change. That's when you start seeing that complacency kind of kick in. So that's the worst advice that I've experienced.
I think such a good point. Again, if you start to think about it as a job and not, oh, this is my career, it might, like you said, Jackie, it might be time to make that change. Because I can't stress enough, you are at work for a good portion of your time during the week. And I don't say that in a bad way. I think that just really emphasizes you want to be doing something that you're finding interesting, it's challenging yourself, and you really see as developing into something to help your career growth. Again, you may change jobs, and that's fine, but you want to make sure you're getting value out of what you're doing. Terza, what would be your best and worst advice?
Best advice would probably be to ask as many questions as you can and to learn as much as you possibly can from as many people as you possibly can. Worst advice is kind of similar to what Jackie was saying, but put your head down and just do your job. Don't try to rock the boat. That's probably the worst advice. We are looking for people that have unique perspectives, that have unique thoughts, and that can challenge the status quo. Obviously, don't go into your internship the first day and say, hey, I know how we can change it and make it better. Obviously, do your research, take your time, know your audience. But if you have a great idea on how to make something better, bring it up.
I love that. So well said. Danielle.
Say yes as much as possible is probably the best advice I can give you. Ask questions, like Teresa said. When you're out of questions to ask for more responsibility, and then ask questions about your new responsibilities. It really helps you move forward in your career, as I mentioned, to just ask for more. And then the worst advice I ever got was fake it till you make it. If you don't know what you're doing, you're never going to know what you're doing. You can't fake it. Somebody's going to find out that you made a mistake, and you're going to be like, oh man, I wish I just asked that question. So don't fake it, ask questions, find a way to keep notes and keep track of the answers you get, so you're not asking the same questions, but keep in mind that nobody expects you to know everything. Even, a couple of years in, it's okay to be like, I think this might be a stupid question, but hey, I don't know how to do this, right? Rather than just guessing and having it be wrong.
Yeah, to Danielle's point, if you're on the underwriter side or even the broker side and you're faking it till you're making it, you're probably going to have some claims that you wouldn't have had if you were just going to ask questions.
Not that claims are bad. Insurance exists for claims to be paid, but we try to avoid them if it's possible from an underwriting standpoint.
Well, speaking of asking questions, I think that's a fantastic segue into our Q&A session. And so we do have a handful of questions here from our group. I am just going to go in how it's listed in front of me. So from Anonymous, once we get the job, if it is work from home, remote, how can we stand out and build connections from behind the screen?
That's a great question. I think for me, when I first started working in a remote environment for a new company, I tried to connect with people one-on-one. If they were training me, I would send a thank you note after. I thought that was a really good way to stand out. Also, look for different organizations that you can get involved with, work on different projects with different teams. That way you can have an advocate in a different group.
To kind of tag on to
Mhm.
tag on to what Terza was saying, from an IT standpoint, we get we had a little bit of that growth when we went full remote, but we have a lot of like daily stand-ups, and even if we don't have anything really to talk about, we still try to attend those just to make sure we're checking in with our team. So that's something I would highly encourage, is particularly in a virtual world, check in with your teammates, because they always have things that they can add, or even just have conversation.
That's also a
One
great
thing-
question to ask in your interview. If they say, "Do you have any questions for me?" Say, "Hey, like if I were to get this role, how do I connect with other members of the company since it is a remote position?" That's a fantastic interview question to ask whoever's talking to you, and then you'll find out if the company has a program in place where they will set you up with different people, if they have ERGs available, if they haven't talked to you about things like that.
Really great tips here. I think the only thing I would add is when you join calls, try your best to do video as much as possible. It's much easier to connect with someone when you can do that face to face. It's easy to want, if you have a big group on, to want to go off camera, but as much as you can, try to turn on your video. You would be surprised how that can really help with feeling more connected as well on both sides. Okay, very interesting. Great question here from Van, I think is relevant to our panel here. Do you feel like you've faced any struggles, through your career as a woman, or maybe do you feel like you approach things differently, or have advice for those pursuing their career?
Absolutely. I can answer that one from the start. It's hard. It's hard to be female in a male-driven industry, but it's getting better. More and more companies are showing more diversity across gender and race. It can be difficult, but you have to go in knowing that, people might look down on you because you're whatever, because you're female, or because of your sexual orientation, or because of your race or your ethnicity, whatever it is. But you have to be bigger than that. Go in, do your work, show that you are an outstanding performer, regardless of anything else. And if the company is really holding you back, and you're noticing that other people of other genders or other races or whatever are getting more than you're getting, and you're performing the same way, leave. That's not the company that's going to support you through your career. It's no longer expected that you stay in the same job for 10, 15 years. If you're not getting what you want after 3 to 5 years, and other people are getting it, you don't understand why, and your manager can't answer that for you, it's time to get out.
Very well said. Does anyone have anything else to add, or I can go to our next question?
Danielle hit the nail on the head with that one.
Perfect. Very well said, Danielle. Thank you.
Thank you.
So great. Thank you for that question. Karan, I had a question. Have you ever dealt with high pressure situations early on in your career? If so, how did you manage?
Definitely. I guess I would say ask for help. Don't be afraid to say, "I'm struggling here. Please help guide me in the right direction." There's nothing worse than, having a difficult project. You think you're on the right track, or you have no idea, and then you get to the end and it's not what they were looking for. So definitely, have those checkpoints where you're asking for guidance. Get yourself a mentor, a coach, a cheerleader, someone that is definitely going to be on your side and guide you.
That's fantastic. I couldn't agree enough. Jackie.
And I know Danielle mentioned this before, but be willing to ask questions, but definitely, and Terza did say this as well, but be willing to have ideas and speak out about those ideas. You may have criticism that say, "Hey, that's not where we're going with this," but don't be afraid to say that. That does kind of help alleviate some of that stress. If you just ask point blank, "Hey, I thought about this. Does this seem to be working okay?" Also get yourself a mentor, and don't be afraid to take some breaks. If you are feeling stressed, take a minute. Just walk away, take five minutes to collect yourself, and then come back with a fresh head. That does really help with those high pressure situations. Excuse me.
I'm so glad you said that, Jackie, because I remember early on in my career, after about a year of starting at Argo, similar to Terza, I actually ended up working with our CEO, helping with his social media presence. And that was a bit daunting for someone, just out of school and having that exposure. And I remember reading that a study showed that if you took a break and if you called, a loved one, I called my mom a lot, and that actually would really help relieve stress. Like it would get your endorphins. It could even make you feel more awake. So to Jackie's point, don't be afraid to step away for a second, take a breath. You're not expected to, run through fire and not breathe. It's good for your mental health too.
The phrase
thing
I
that
love
helped
is,
me-
you're not chained to your desk. You really aren't. You can get up and move around.
One thing that helped me too with big projects early on is breaking them up into smaller steps. So if I knew I had to get this big overarching thing done, I'd say, okay, how can I do this in smaller ways? And I used to keep emergency chocolate in my desk for stressful situations when I couldn't figure it out. I still do. And I would reward myself with one of those every time I finish one of my little checkpoints. I'd say, okay, it's time for some chocolate, and take a little break and reward yourself for the small points of things too, rather than just the overall project.
I love that. We have a question from Anonymous. What's a mistake you've made in your career, and what did you learn from it? Who would like to start?
I will. I've made lots of mistakes. I'll be the first one to say it. I accidentally erased an entire database of addresses once in my first job for ODIN notices, which get sent out on policies when you need to cancel them or non-renew them. It was one of those situations that I learned early on. If you don't know, ask. That's really what I learned from that. It was probably day 15 on the job. And luckily I didn't get in trouble because somebody realized they probably should have shown me how to do that before they let me loose on it. But yeah, it definitely taught me the importance of asking before just doing when you think you know.
I would say my biggest mistake was leaving a job because another job offered me a lot more money. Money isn't everything. You have to take in the culture of the company, how you're valued in your company, all of that into consideration. Money can come later, but I would say don't chase money early on.
I think my biggest mistake, and something that honestly I learned just from experience, is know your audience. I tend to like to break the ice a little bit and have some humor, and maybe there is a situation where that is not appropriate. So be sure to just know your audience.
Really great advice. And I think this shows you're going to make mistakes along the way. The key is learning from them, and what can you do next time. So we
Just
also
one more
have,
thing on that, Jen.
Yes.
It is really important, if you recognize that you make a mistake, that you bring that mistake forward rather than waiting for somebody else to call you out on it. That is what I did in that situation. I said, oh no, what did I do? I'm so sorry. And they were able to help me get it fixed. But if I'd waited and said, oh, I hope nobody notices, it would have turned into a much larger problem. So own your mistakes when you make them.
It also shows a level of
Well said.
maturity that, I'm an adult. I'm owning up to this. Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, well said, ladies. I did just receive another anonymous question. I really like this because, speaking of mistakes, right? What advice do you have on how to rebound if maybe you accidentally started off on the wrong foot? I have one idea. I think, especially if it's with a specific person and maybe you feel like you misspoke, or you kind of said the wrong thing and you got the feeling that it didn't go over well, I say have a direct conversation. Hey, I feel like I accidentally misspoke here. It wasn't my intention. I definitely didn't, if that's what happened. Like, I would say clear the air. A lot of people really respect when you can own up to that. Maybe you misspoke or something didn't go the right way, nip it in the bud early, because trying to hide it isn't going to make you feel any better. And it's definitely, if they really did feel something, it's not going to make them feel better either.
If that doesn't work too, remember that there are other people in your corner. There's your manager, there's your HR representative. If you really can't get on the right foot with somebody after trying, it might be worth a conversation, because that person might just be having a bad day, or they might need to check their ego. You might need to check yours in that situation as well. It's very humbling starting in a new place, meeting new people, and it makes you realize that, oh, maybe I don't know everything that I thought that I knew, or oh, maybe I do need to be a little nicer here. Everybody has very different communication styles, and it's really easy, especially in a virtual environment where you're only talking occasionally, to butt heads and things like that. So just be humble and remember that you have help outside of that direct interaction if you're not getting anywhere on your own.
Only thing I want to add to that is if you're sensing something in writing, whether it's an email or a chat, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and have a conversation. I know in today's world, we are very more inclined to just send a message in writing, but we need to kind of move away from that going forward. That connection, either on a phone, face to face, really does make a difference.
So glad you said that. We talk about it a lot on the communications team. And remember, you cannot read tone in email as much as you want to. And I'm definitely someone, my boss loves to use an ellipsis, and that is daunting. And he uses it both happy and mad. So I'm like, what's happening? So it's definitely great point, Jackie. You know, clear the air, pick up the phone. It's a lot easier to figure out things and go from there. All right, let's see if we can fit in these last two questions I have here. Hannah Peters asks, what are some resources for college graduates who didn't major in risk management or take RM classes to learn more about the industry, you know, outside of internships?
I love ERMI. ERMI is the best website. If you have a question, ERMI will break it down for you. Another good resource is Reference Connect. Those are two websites that I used a lot when I was first starting out and I had an insurance degree. There's a lot of stuff that they don't teach you in school that you learn on the job. And those are really great tools to kind of help with the transition.
There's also a group called Emerging Insurance Professionals who has chapters in most major cities. You can search and see if they have one in your city and reach out and see if somebody's available to have one of those types of coffee chats or meet up with you for lunch or something. And you can kind of pick their brain about the industry in your area specifically, which is helpful.
Fantastic. And again, I think it also goes back to, you know, taking time to make those relationships and ask questions. You know, I've learned a lot from the different teams I've had the opportunity to work with. Again, I'm in communications, did not have any insurance background. I didn't even know really what the specialty insurance industry was when I came in. I knew about all the personal lines, but nothing about, you know, B2B. So I definitely would ask a lot of questions. Google, you know, it sounds silly, but Google is a friend. And it is a great place to start if you are a little nervous about coming in a bit green on a topic. You know, don't be afraid to maybe just look at an article or two. And then again, it goes back to what we've heard from our fantastic panels here, ask questions.
If you scroll back up in the chat, there are links to all of our LinkedIn pages. Feel free to add us. I know I'm going to speak to everybody else, but I'm very open to you connecting with me on LinkedIn, sending me a message if you have any direct questions about the industry or companies or how to broach any kind of topic in an interview or anything like that. I'm happy to help.
That is fantastic.
And we will fit in one last question super quickly. I know that some people are dropping off. Hopefully this is a quick question that one of you can answer. Van asks, is it okay to connect with the interviewee on LinkedIn before the interview, or would that be considered unprofessional?
I would probably wait until afterwards. My personal preference would be to wait, just because you may not end up liking that person. And you like, honestly, that person might just not be somebody you vibe with during the interview process when you've got this random connection. But I think waiting till afterwards is a great way to follow up your interview too, to show them that you're interested and excited about the job. Follow up, connect with them on LinkedIn. If they say yes, then you can send them a quick message being like, thank you again for interviewing today. I really appreciate your time, yada, yada, yada.
It also speaks volumes if you don't reach out via LinkedIn.
I agree with Danielle. I would probably wait to make the connection, but I also, like I said earlier, I always look up the person I'm interviewing with on LinkedIn just to see about them. But yeah, I would probably wait to make that connection until after.
I agree. Especially like exactly, I think pointed out, you know, it's a great way to follow up, but also if you're not vibing, then you haven't already made that connection and you won't have to see them in your feed. Well, this was fantastic. I want to thank our panelists here for all their insights and advice. And I want to thank all of you so much for joining us today. We hope you found value in our panel session. And thank you, Tandeka and the Spencer Foundation for hosting us. Again, you saw all the links in the chat, everything from our LinkedIn profiles to Argo groups as well. Follow us, connect with us. And thank you again. We wish you well on your career journeys.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so
Everyone.
much. Jennifer, Teresa, Jackie, Danielle, thank you guys so much for hanging out here with us for an hour. And Brianna, of course, from Argo, thank you for putting this all together. For those of you that are aware, or I guess even if you're not aware, we do host these sessions on a weekly basis. So next week's session is going to be Thursday, July 27th from 1 to 2 Eastern. Our presenting company will be AXA Excel, and we are going to learn all about risk management from the perspective of an underwriter and the risk manager. So thank you all again for being here today. Check out our website, and we will catch you next week. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.